Hearing or seeing none, please, if you approve, please signify by waving your hand.
Don't remote meetings need to have, in a remote meeting, don't all votes need to be roll call votes?
Yeah.
You are correct.
I can
You want to
do-
handle that, Margaret?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can do it.
I'm
Okay,
glad we have Anthony. He is the parliamentarian.
he
Mhm.
is. No question about it. Thank you, Anthony. Deborah's
Okay.
got the roll.
Okay.
Okay. Nate,
Yes.
Glenn, sorry, I can't see yet. I just got on late.
Glenn,
Not
I think,
here.
is
Okay.
not here.
Okay. Yamali is not here, correct?
Yes, correct.
Beth Ann,
Yes.
Anthony,
Yes.
Matt Formica is not here, correct?
Correct.
Jenna?
Yes.
No, Matt
Rick?
Matt Formica's here.
Oh, he is?
Oh, he is. Look at that.
Okay.
He's calling in from the terminal.
Okay. So Matt?
I just signed on. I don't know what you're voting on.
Oh, we're voting on the meeting minutes.
To
Sounds
approve the
great.
minutes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Jenna, Rick?
Yes, approved.
Thank you. Bob McCarthy is not here, correct?
Correct.
Mayor Pangalo? Oh,
That was a yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Perla?
Yes.
Betsy?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
And I believe Paul is not here, correct?
All is absent, correct.
Okay, correct. So there are 12 people here, just so for the record.
Did we capture everyone?
Yes, we did.
That's all the voting members, yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. I will now hand it off to Margaret. We're going to talk about milestone schedule review and next steps. Margaret?
Yeah. So hopefully you have all not grown weary of this diagram because we're going to keep seeing it for a little while. But we are at the May 8th line where we're going to take, you'll be asked to take a vote on the preferred option. And then in about a little over a month, we will be bringing you the preferred schematic report on the preferred option. So those are the big items. Once we hit that deadline, things slow down a little bit for all of us as the designers start to dig into the schematic design, which is the long blue line you see on the screen. So next slide, please. So just a couple of updates. First of all, I want to give a huge shout out to everybody who participated in the community meetings last week. Yes, it was last week. They were great. We had great turnout. The design team is going to report on some of what we heard in the meetings, but thank you to everybody who came or sent your friends because the turnout was really terrific and the comments were super helpful. So we are where the red arrow is today, voting on the preferred option. We have a pileup of meetings at the absolute easiest time of the year to attend meetings in June when there's a lot going on at the schools. So I just want to acknowledge that to all of you who are teaching or managing kids who are in school. This is a lot. So we'll have a meeting on the 29th where the design team will be giving us an update on the preferred option development, which is really going on for another 8 months, right? But we need to take another step forward on the detailed design of that option. Then on the 12th of June, we're going to look at the entirety draft submittal of the preferred schematic option. So you'll remember it's like the PDP, but it's now more focused on a particular design, and the due diligence piece is kind of behind us. Then on the 18th, you will be asked to vote to authorize the submission of the PSR. And in tandem around that time, the school committee will also be voting to give their final approval to the ED program and the space summary. And then school ends, everything blows up, and we don't need to get back together until July 17th. So that's kind of the overview. I do want to comment on the bottom line that we are still waiting for the comments from the MSBA on the preferred PDP submission. So we're hoping that we told them you were taking a vote tonight and said, you know, we really hope that whatever your comments are, they're, you know, basically supporting everything that's been proposed so far. So hopefully we'll have an update for you on that on the 29th. And then off in the distance in late July, it looks like we have a likely date for a meeting, an important meeting with them, what they call their Facilities Assessment Subcommittee, where the kind of peer group of the MSBA weighs in and makes their own peer comments on the preferred option. So that's kind of encapsulates what's going on here. So, all right, next slide. Okay, so the two big items we're going to tackle today. First, we're going to look at each of the options in some detail and ask you to take a vote, have some discussion and take a vote on the preferred option. Then when that is done, we're going to revisit the issue that we spent quite a bit of time at the last meeting on, which was talking about the options for construction procurement or construction delivery. I think we do not need to spend as much time on that, but we are also asking you to take a vote on that. And then there's some miscellaneous other things we want to talk about, but those are the two big items. So I am going to turn it over to the design team to lead us through a detailed view of the options. These are mostly the same images that you saw if you had a chance to look at the draft that was sent out last night. So the sequence of a couple things have changed, but otherwise the content is the same. So Brooke, do you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you,
Brooke, hey,
Margaret.
Brooke, before you go, just for the folks on listening to the Zoom, we're gonna go through all of the options and then have the discussion. We're not gonna stop and then discuss and then go to the next one and discuss. We're just gonna go through all of them.
Yes, and we'll go through the presentation. Hopefully people had a chance to review everything in advance. As Margaret said, some of the order has changed for clarity purposes. And it'll be obvious to you. So let's stay focused on the presentation itself that you're seeing in front of you. This you have seen before. This is an evaluation matrix. We did identify issues that actually you as a committee brought forward some issues of relevance, issues that you would like to use as an evaluation tool to determine the options. And on the far left are those issues, are those things like cost, site design, building location, athletic programs, ZNE, reuse, and educational priorities. We filled out, obviously you can see some of the items in red because those are really data-driven items. I mean, where we put a future expansion, whether it's adjacent or to an added floor, that's not something you really need to have to figure out yourself to evaluate the determination of where we are with cost. We just identified with a single dollar sign, double, triple. However, I will say renovation, addition, and new construction should probably almost be the same in terms of dollar sign. Well, Margaret will get into that in a bit. So what we think you should do is think about this as we proceed with the discussion. Think about the phasing complexity as we go through that a little bit. Think about the site design, the site access. Those are things that we have talked with you about before. Think about, you don't really need to think about the future expansion, but you might think about things like the presence of the building on the site, the presence of the building in the community. You'll think about athletic fields and courts and where they're located. The life carbon cycle. We will point things out to you as we go, outdoor learning opportunities, but just keep these in mind. We're not going to go through this in the end. We are going to think about the attributes that will fulfill your expectation or doesn't fulfill your expectation. So that's sort of the premise of the matrix. As Margaret said, we had 3 really, really effective meetings last week. We had an in-person meeting with the community and it was well attended. We had a great discussion. It was a 2-hour meeting, which did, I admit, last 2.5 hours. And that was because there was just so much dialogue, so many questions, and it was great. Everybody was willing to stay. You have seen this in advance of the meeting, so we're not going to go through every question, but there were a lot of great questions. How long will they take? What's the cost of doing nothing, which is the code option, and we have pricing for that. A little bit about construction duration, about noise and traffic, how many seats in the auditorium. They were very specific in their comments. There was also issues of some challenges or concerns and talking about transparency, making sure we think about Horace Mann, that which we are thinking about in the traffic solutions. People were very positive about the options, and we will say that there was pretty much a unanimous interest in new construction. Not that that should sway you, but we're just letting you know the facts. And if you were there, you saw that. We then had a virtual meeting, and we were able with that meeting to do mentee surveys so we could capture that information. And you see that here. We also have meeting minutes for the other one. We asked them about the sustainable ideas. People were very interested in net positive, healthy buildings, natural light, and views. Really love the holistic approach to the building and site design, and saving money with a Z&E building. We asked questions about their thoughts on the educational program and future spaces. We talked about the integration of CTE with the other spaces. There were questions about the special ed programs, which are integrated throughout. They asked about a new gym having a track for competitions. No, it won't have a full track for competitions. It will have a jogging track, and talking about the spaces that are accessible for the community. We asked them about the options, what their thoughts were for the options that we presented. They said the new building seemed to be a great option at the moment. They like the fact that the new building still stays more out of the existing footprint. There was less phasing involved. They like the new build that creates a common towards the new entry. They thought that was nice. Many of you have already read these, and we will have this uploaded if others on the call would like to look at them in more detail. We had an educational leadership workshop, and this was great. People were really focused on this work, and we ended up doing an exercise. People broke out into pairs, and I'll explain what they were given. I'm going to just go to this for a second, because this is something that you haven't seen before, and the reason you haven't seen it before is we have been really hard at work working out the program as well as the adjacency requirements from everyone. So we have finally been able to create a document that shows, so all these bubbles represent a space, and they are to scale. So the gymnasium is really big because it's a really big space at 18,000 square feet. And then the auditorium and other spaces are in relative sizes. So we gave this diagram to the group as well as the other 2 floors. So this is level 1. We also explained to them that there are a lot of competing needs. Right now, we're estimating the ground floor to be about 155,000 square feet. And some of the programs in red here, we're having trouble getting on the first floor. I don't think anyone thought.
Just for the new construction option we're talking.
We're using new construction because it's easier to get your brain around as a prototype, as sort of more of the ideal, what could work. And everything in red are programs that we are having challenges getting on the first floor because there are a lot of competing needs. So these are net square footages in these columns. And we can answer questions as we get to the end of this. So then we gave everyone the exercise of looking at these diagrams and saying, what do you think of these adjacencies? What do you think works? What do you think doesn't work? And we have the first floor, and we know that some programs absolutely need to be on the first floor, like carpentry and property maintenance, automotive and technology. Gymnasium is excellent to be on the first floor with the locker rooms, auditorium and music. Music wants to be with auditorium. Culinary arts because of the Black Cat Cafe, cafeteria, and kitchen. There was great discussion around this. We also showed the second floor, which have the academic neighborhoods, and the purple color, those are classrooms, and the lower color, those are special ed. They're not separated, they're integrated, they're just shown separately for purposes of this diagram. Everything teal, those are the CTE programs that are throughout the building. So we're trying to create a very integrated program in this comprehensive high school. We have circled some of the programs that would like to be next to each other, like these two culinary classrooms down on the first floor. We're having trouble fitting those classrooms there, and maybe the alt-E PE in the health classroom. So this is still very much a work in progress. And we're going to tell you some of the thoughts that came out of that. So this is the third floor. We have programming and web and graphic design and the art programs, which have a lot of synergies between them. There was a lot of talk about the flagship programs of medical assisting and biomed, as well as the classrooms in science. We have administrative suites on every floor. So here's two administrative suites. So we have an academic classroom neighborhood on one side, academic neighborhood on the other. We have the CTE classrooms distributed, and admin somewhere on that floor for getting adult eyes with on the kids. For supervision, we have the fourth floor, similar neighborhoods, the Idea Lab and robotics, putting early ed on the fourth floor, and electrical. And you see, when you see the plan, we're putting these in really wonderful spaces to make these spaces visible from outside. So we have highlighted some things that we have identified as things that we're working through, but this is very, very much a work in progress. And here are some of the takeaways. We asked for big, bold ideas, and this group wasn't afraid to give them. They asked a lot about the admin suite. Should this be distributed more into the other floors, not just on the first floor? We are going to meet with the high school team and go through some of these. The school store where it should be, Hawthorne could be on any floor next to admin, the book storage, JROTC could go anywhere. They did talk about medical assisting possibly being by the nurse. It's challenging, but medical assisting and biomed being flagship programs. Talked a lot about the elevators, access through the building, computer labs, daycare. We did identify some program element issues around daycare, so we have that back in the program. And there was a strong preference towards new construction with this. So this was a really great exercise. Thank you so much to that team. We cannot do this work without the input of the users, the people who are working using this building. So it was a really fun exercise, and it was very effective, and we plan on doing this again. So with that, we know that this was the original, if you can all remember back to the day where we had all of these options on the table. We then went to these options. We are looking at code, upgrade, renovation only, renovation addition, and we have one new construction scheme, which is the RAP scheme, A.4.4. We removed A.4.5, which was keeping the Salerno Center. So with that, we're going to go through the options. We're going to lean in a little more on renovation only because we don't think we spent enough time with that. But other than that, nothing should look radically different. We have some more developments in the site plans, and we're going to show that to you, but nothing should be really unfamiliar to you at this point. So Patrick is going to take you through some of these, where we are with these options.
Great, thanks, Brooke. So we'll start off with the code upgrade only and kind of refresh your memory of this scheme. And the scheme obviously will bring the building up to all the major building codes, including ADA. It will have new HVAC and plumbing, most of which are because those systems are at the end of their useful life. But that also means that electrical and fire protection systems will be upgraded throughout the building right now. For example, only parts of the building are sprinklered. The building will also need to meet the current new energy code, which is aggressive. So it means that there is investment in the building envelope, not just the building mechanical systems. In this scheme, obviously, the site program relationships don't change too much. We kind of retain the district storage that's in the building. And importantly, you retain a building that is oversized, quite frankly, for the program. So you have the challenges that come with that. So the challenges, obviously, with that are that you have all those costs with very little educational benefit. And it's kind of in a way that the cost of doing nothing, it can't really be done because all of these things really are required to kind of maintain accreditations and maintain a building that is usable for the community. So you can see in the renovation only scheme, and we're talking about a more substantial renovation, not just a code renovation. So in that option, we would still be looking at upgrading the mechanical systems and attempting to achieve zero net energy with the building. It will be more difficult. Mostly you can see just if you were to trace your finger around the perimeter of the building, there's a lot more ins and outs, and every one of those little corners is a potential for energy loss. So the ability to make a really efficient envelope to the building obviously is not there. This would require a fairly disruptive multi-phase project, and we'll get into detail a little bit more in that. We started to flush out the plans for this scheme and really started to work with what the assets of the existing building are. So for example, the space that we typically meet in the library space is a beautiful open space that looks out into the trees. We're thinking that could be a really fantastic place for the cafe. It's really right sized and in the right position to be the kind of heart or the social heart of the school, rather than having the cafe be on multiple levels in lower spaces, kind of off to the side of the building. So we would be reconfiguring the back of house and kitchen to support that cafe at the center of the building. And it would allow the cafe space to really become a better pre-function space for both the auditorium as well as your existing gymnasium. If you look to the right, that's the right-hand half of the plan. We're looking at organizing the plan in such a way that you would get the CTE spaces integrated into the academic neighborhoods. So now that we have room to grow into the existing cafe space, we would be looking to bring some CTE spaces into that existing cafe space and really balance the kind of pinwheel shape in the plan of that academic neighborhood with zones that are CTE focused and zones that are traditionally academically focused. So that as you kind of move around that pinwheel, you can experience the many ways that the Salem community learns within the building. You can see we're still maintaining, say, for example, on level 1, the lowest level to the building, spaces where you'd have auto access. So you'd be bringing vehicles into the auto marine space there. There's the potential in the scheme to maintain the Salerno Center as garage space, but that's obviously not ideal as it is disconnected from the building. So we're looking at kind of taking advantage of that goal of being integrated in the educational program. And you can see we're kind of repositioning things so that the life of the building has more of a heart and isn't spread out across from end to end in terms of the most public aspects of the building. This scheme obviously has a complex phasing. So we've started to tease out strategies, and this would obviously get a lot more input if this scheme moves forward with a contractor on board to really help us kind of tease out what the most cost-effective way to phase the building is. But needless to say, it definitely would be multi-phase and complex. The strategy here implies that we would take half of that pinwheel at a time, renovate them by moving students into modular classrooms or into the current cafe space temporarily. And through each phase, we would then take essentially half of the pinwheel, move students into that half, and then renovate the other half of the corridor. So in that way, it kind of keeps the construction sectioned off vertically on one side of the corridor. So we're also looking at how we might phase then the bulk of the spaces that support the life of the school in a more public way, the auditorium spaces, the gyms, locker room spaces, and those could be done in a number of different ways, depending on how much construction you want to bite off at one time on the site.
And I want to just interject that, Margaret, who was it who said they moved 9 times the last time they did, when they did the renovation?
I think it was Lori. Lori, was it 9 times? Or
Yeah, it was
someone
like, it was around 4 times that I moved in a year and a half. I moved classrooms.
All right, so 4 times. So again, we know that a CM would do this differently. It might not, it probably would have to be depicted in many, many pages of drawings to get that right. But there would be, as Lori could tell you, a significant impact to teaching and learning, and what you'll see is cost. So you can chime in later with that. Okay, sorry about that.
Next, we're going to look at the ad renovation scheme. This scheme retains the existing gymnasium space and builds around that kind of heart to the school. And it does it also in multiple phases. But this scheme has the benefit of moving the building out of the center of the site and taking that flat section in the center of the site and creating really beautiful open common field space for community and to really set up a beautiful entry to the school. And so if you can go to the next page, we talk a little bit about the pros and cons of that. So if you remember, in all of these schemes, we're looking at moving the primary entry to the site down street from Highland, so that the Wilson Street entry onto campus is further away from the congestion of Highland Avenue. We're also looking at creating an emergency entry or exit only onto Highland Avenue so that you have multiple options to serve the site in the event of an emergency. And this scheme looks at taking over the Horace Mann Field for a GeoExchange well field because it would be closest to the bulk of the building, so it would be most efficient. This scheme has a single new field in the center of the site. And then obviously you'd be maintaining or upgrading the fields that are across the power line easement to the south. It has the option to retain the Salerno Center or not at the western corner of the site. And as you can see here, it's built around the existing field house. So this scheme builds the majority of the CTE and public function spaces on that first phase of the project south of the existing gymnasium. And it does so because that's the piece that can get built without interrupting the life of the rest of the existing school. So, so you see in this scheme that those spaces like auto marine, auditorium, early ed are all on that southern wing of the building. And fewer spaces are kind of up and integrated within the traditional classrooms in the neighborhoods. And that's because really they need to be built first as part of the phasing strategy. So kind of rough phasing strategy here in chunks is to build that first phase south of the existing gymnasium, move those CTE programs into that space and connect that temporarily to the existing building. You can then demolish those CTE programs that are in the northeastern corner of the building and build the bulk of the rest of the academic spaces. And then in a fourth phase, we'd be able to come back and stitch the building together and create an entry And then finally, in that fifth phase, be able to demolish the remainder of the existing building and complete the playing fields at the center of the site. And a quick massing diagram here to give you a sense of scale, and you can see how the building kind of opens its arms to that new playing field. It does put the bulk of the building pretty far from Highland Avenue, so there really wouldn't be a public image of the building from Highland. Even right now, it's tough to see the existing school from Highland, so this would be even further away from that edge. It does kind of maintain the rocky knolls as well. So between the building and those ledge outcroppings, they define this beautiful new field at the center of the site. And lastly, the site strategy for the new construction is to place the building on the edge of Highland and to kind of reinforce a gradient from highland to wetland that goes from the most built up part of the site to the most natural edges of the site. And in this scheme, we're starting to study, there's really multiple ways that you can configure the playing fields in the center of the site. And we'll show you a beginning to that thinking. So in this scheme, you can imagine that their academic spaces are dispersed around the perimeter of the building. They're integrated with the CTE programs because we have really the flexibility to place them where we want in new construction. So it's a bit more idealized. And there's the opportunity really to bring those academic spaces kind of out into the landscape and think about how the landscape really becomes a teaching tool for many of the programs in the building. So in this game, we took another stab at kind of looking at the playing fields at the center of the site. The majority of the rest of the plan is as we presented last time. But what you'll see here is that to balance the needs of athletics with the needs for exterior academic teaching space, and to balance those needs, both of those needs, with providing enough landscape to stitch the natural ecology of the site to the programmatic, the more intense parts of the site. We've moved the tennis and pickleball south of the utility easement into that lower playing field section. And what that allows for is a bit more flexibility for the academic field spaces at the center of the site, and enough space for some constructed wetland water retention and natural buffers so that we can make that transition that came out of our conversation about living design more seamless.
Just to say, Patrick, that we did review these options. We had a couple of options. We reviewed them with the superintendent and he and the working group subcommittee, so they can chime in after we get through this. This diagram will help a little bit more in describing that.
There are multiple ways that we can configure this as we continue the conversation, but you can see what we've done by moving tennis kind of down to that southern portion of the site is we've allowed the zone that is on the eastern edge of the playing fields to become a bit more naturalized, integrate some walking paths, and also provide for a bit more space so that you have the potential for baseball and softball to overlap the playing fields at the center of the site. So you have a bit more flexibility. It also puts tennis directly adjacent to that parking lot, which is currently bus parking. So it allows there to be a nice adjacency between that community use and accessible parking there.
And just a couple of points, both soccer fields. This is our, everybody wants as many fields as possible. So this is what we're working towards. And I think the superintendent thought there was a real benefit to have softball and baseball. So that's D and C. A and B, we're working towards those both meet the MIAA and NFSH requirements. They're small, but they do meet that. And we do have 5 tennis courts for competition. On the bottom, there are different ways to configure the lower part, but I think it was Rick who really was excited about the parking. I don't know if you said this, Patrick, but the parking being associated with tennis, and he thought that was a real advantage. So this is just to say that we're working through it. It's exciting that we're getting a lot of opportunity on this site, and I think Rick, was it Rick or Nate who asked this question about Salem State University fields? Anybody remember?
Well, I was there for a softball game last night, so I was looking at it and I had the image of the of the site plan in my head. So I thought it might be a good visual for people because people know that space.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here's your visual.
So if
This
you're
is-
familiar with the space, you can see it kind of clipped out from the aerial on the left and overlaid to scale to what we've been discussing. So you can see it's in length, it's roughly similar scale space in terms of the soccer field and softball overlap. And then it's a bit wider and would have a bit more of a natural edge around it. So overall, I think it would feel like a larger space than that, but would have roughly the same kind of functional area.
Does that help everyone? Give you a sense of scale?
It certainly helps me. Yes.
Good. Excellent. So, go on, Patrick.
Sure. So you saw these plans are generally the same as what we presented at our last meeting with some minor tweaks. But as we move forward with any of the schemes that were presented, whatever one moves forward, there would be, you know, more iteration, kind of looking at what the ideal is, especially since we've got some great feedback just in the last week from your educators.
And we'll continue to have those discussions. This just will be, you know, a give and take of where programs fit, what the community access requires, what the direct entry requires, let's say for the infant toddler room. So there are a lot of competing forces, and that's design. That's what makes design great, that we have, you know, our conceptual idea, we have your program, we have the community entries and egresses, we have the connection to the outdoors, we have the play areas, we have so many wonderful things on this site that we're going to spend after the vote the time to develop those options to meet those requirements.
All right.
Maybe, well, yeah, we can pause here to see if anybody has any questions from the material sent last night, what's presented.
Our carbon numbers too, really quickly.
Oh, yeah. I think, was that next? Yes.
Let's look
okay.
at the carbon.
Yeah, please.
So both at our living design workshop and then also within our community meetings, there were conversations about the overall story of carbon and, more importantly, really global warming potential on the site. So there's a lot of numbers and it's a bit wonky, and I'm happy to unpack them with those of my fellow nerds who want to get into it at a separate meeting. But what we did basically was we took benchmarking numbers that our office has contributed to at a firm-wide level to understand what we think at a high level might be the global warming potential for the construction of the project. And when we say global warming potential, that figure there that's measured in kilograms of CO2 equivalent is essentially a blended number that's saying out of all the things that contribute to global warming potential, that's a kind of rolled up number, and it does it in CO2 EQ just so you have a kind of metric that you can understand. That number includes the life cycle carbon number. So what we're talking about are two big buckets: the embodied carbon, which is the energy it takes to make the things that you're sitting on, that are enclosing your classrooms, that are the structure of your building. And then the operational carbon. And the operational carbon is the piece that we're talking about zeroing if we go to zero net energy. But for this purpose, we wanted to show you kind of apples to apples. Before you put any PV on the site, this is the total global warming potential for each option. And a couple of caveats is that it's very hard to quantify the carbon associated with renovations because you're moving students around, meaning you might be actually renovating the same space in the building multiple times. And every time you do that, there's an embodied carbon penalty essentially. So we actually think the code upgrade and reno option and major addition renovation would actually go up a bit, because we'd have to quantify the carbon associated with a temporary classroom, or operating the heating system on a temporary classroom, or re-renovating a classroom multiple times over the construction period. The important thing that you see is that they are not terribly far off from each other. And then what you can see in that total carbon number on the top for the existing high school, and this is based on the information that the district provided us for its operational energy. The global carbon dioxide essentially for it is, up around 82 million for just operating the school you have. That's kind of just doing nothing essentially. So you can look at the massive impact in reduction of carbon that will happen through any of the options that you vote on tonight. And you can see that those numbers are actually pretty close to each other.
So this is, really the recap slide that indicates what you will be voting on. You'll be selecting one of these options tonight. And let me just take a peek at the next slide. I think it probably is important for Margaret to go through the costs. Does anybody have any questions on what has been presented so far? Was there something that jumped out at you that seemed different than what you expected, or did it feel like just an evolution of the ideas that we have been presenting?
But before I see you, Jenna, but I'm just thinking, do we want to go over costs so that we have a better picture before
Sure.
folks are asking questions?
Of course.
Jenna, would you mind holding off on your question? And let's do costs, and then again, that may inform folks' decision, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Okay, everybody. So I can't point because I don't have control of the website, but I am going to look at the numbers. So between the last time and today, the estimator, Peter Bradley, PM&C, who is working with Perkins and Will, did another round of estimating. Each estimate that is backing up these numbers is about 14 pages long. So I thought it was better that we sort of provide a summary of these, and I looked at this two different ways to help folks understand where these numbers come from. Once we have selected the preferred option, there will be another yet more detailed estimate on the preferred option that will be what you will be seeing in late June. So let me just go right to it. The format that you're seeing right now, this is a format in which the MSBA requires us to present the data for the PSR submission. So but it is kind of useful in the sense that each option is horizontally on a line. And what it does is it breaks down how much renovation there is, how much new construction there is, how much other costs there is, which is the column site building takedown. That's the everything else column, the total, and then estimated total project cost. Now, you may remember that we have been using 25% as an estimate of project cost. So in a nutshell, in order to get to these numbers, there was an estimate on each option, and then I plugged all these numbers into this MSBA format, and to get to the last column, I added 25%. And the project cost, again, as a reminder, is inclusive of all those other things that are not the building. So fees for the design team and the OPM, costs for furniture, technology, and equipment, and contingencies are the big buckets, but it's inclusive of all the other costs associated with the project that are not the building. Okay, so what you see in the slide is, I think, what was partially reflected back in the matrix, which is that the most expensive option coming in here is the addition renovation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the reasons for that on the next slide. The renovation option is the second, the least expensive option that is not the code option is new. The new option is, let's call it 455 million. And then the code renovation is about 353 million. Z, I thought I saw your hand up for a minute. Did you have a question? Or are you holding it?
I did. Just a quick question. In these totals, especially for the new construction, are maintenance costs in this pricing or no? For like 1, 3, or 5 year maintenance cost?
Yes. So
They are?
maintenance costs that are associated with the equipment are
Okay.
part of they're part of the specifications,
Yep.
which produce the final cost.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
there will be more conversations about that. In fact, I was just talking about that with friends over lunch and how increasingly how important that is in order to make sure that you have service support for the first couple of years that you're operating equipment. So great
Thank you.
question. Okay. Let's look at the next slide, which looks at this a different way. And just to make it more confusing, now instead of going horizontally, it's going vertically. I just couldn't figure out another way to do this, but now each of the options, they're the 4 columns that are in color. And what I did was I rolled up, to get these numbers, I rolled up certain kind of buckets of the way construction cost is organized. And the highlighted lines are the places where you see a lot of variation between options. So obviously on the first couple of lines, there's everything from no new construction to 100% new construction. The renovation option, it's the reverse. Demolition is from partial to complete. And the need for temporary classroom varies from a lot to nothing. Right, so those are based on the options. The estimate that all of these numbers are derived from actually broke down all of this information. So then there's a cost on all of them for abatement of hazardous materials in the school. There is, because of the era in which it was built, there actually is a fair amount of asbestos. So that number is carried on every project. The site work number varies a lot. And you can imagine, if you think back to the presentation you just saw, if you've got a new building, there's a lot with a small footprint, there's a lot of site work. If you have an existing building, which you're keeping the footprint of, and you're kind of working around the edges, it's less. So, but I will say, I thought the estimator did a very good job of pulling in a lot of complicated information, which included ledge removal, fields, it's actually listed down at the bottom, ledge removal, roadways, site improvements, courts, fields, landscaping, utility. So all of those are embedded in that site work line. There's escalation included here, which is typically done for these kinds of projects to the midpoint of construction, which is the point where it is assumed that everything that is going to be bought for the project is bought. And it varies depending on the duration of the project. And then you sort of get into a whole bunch of more detailed things. I think it's one important line here is duration. So the very bottom line, the estimator also looked in more detail, and we've heard this question a lot, like what's the relative duration? I think these are reasonable assumptions. So he believes that the code version is 36 months, the renovation version is 48 months, the ad reno version is 36 months, and the new construction is 30 months. These are not hard and fast numbers, but again, I think they're relative values, and I think they're accurate from what we understand of the phasing that is required for some of these, which is what adds to duration. And that in turn drives the item, which is sort of in the middle. It's called general conditions. Maybe Brooke or whoever's controlling you could point out. So the general conditions line is estimated. So that's the price of having the contractor on the site and the estimator was using $400,000 a month. And obviously that number becomes very variable in these calculations, because if they're there less time, there's less general conditions. If there's there's more general conditions. So you can see how that's a condition where the new construction version, which has a higher cost in other categories, has a lower cost in this category than the renovation option by almost, it's not double, but it's 70% more for the renovation option, because you are paying on a monthly basis for the contractor to be on site. So that's the kind of big overview. I also just want to note that and we can talk about this a little bit, the last two lines that are not bold, the estimator, as is required by the MSBA, does identify what the cost of the construction manager is. So now these are costs which, if you're in a general contract, you don't actually see them spelled out. They're kind of embedded within the contract. Here, because we're signing a contract for these services, we actually see them and they're identified. And I think want to pick up on this when we go to the next step, which is after this vote, which is the vote on the construction manager. So that is all I'm going to say about this, but now I think we could toggle to questions and discussion on this. And also, actually, can we see the next slide? I think this is an opportunity for someone to make a motion ahead of the
Margaret,
discussion.
I just want to say before we move off of this, that
Yep.
we are in a very preliminary phase of the project, and you see the diagrams in which this estimator is estimating. It's based on a lot of data, a lot of prior experiences, understanding what's involved. However, the true cost will be developed after, we'll have another cost at the end of this phase and then a cost at the end of schematic design. So that is when you will have the project funding agreement at that time, and you'll have a much better idea of the cost. There may be a tolerance here. We're in the range of where things are, but I just need to say that out loud. And I know Margaret says it a lot, but I just want to say it, so things could go up or down a little bit, but that's part of the process.
Didn't say it. Thank you for saying it for me.
Okay.
So, just Nate, back to you for.
Yeah, so I have
Next
I have two thoughts here. We could make the motion and have conversations and questions within the motion, or we can have the conversations and questions now and then the motion. I can go either way. I'm anticipating there's going to be quite a few questions. So maybe we do a Q&A now, and then we can make a motion. Is everybody
That
okay
would be
with that?
great. Yeah.
Okay. So
I
I'm
agree
just
with
in
that
just in the order that I saw people. I know Jenna was first, and I saw the mayor, and then I saw Lori. Jenna, you're muted.
Said I'd defer to the mayor.
Oh. So
Hey.
Are you deferring?
Yeah, I'll go after the mayor. That's fine.
Okay.
Keep my hand
Mayor?
up.
Can you hear me now?
Faintly, but yes.
Can you hear me now?
Better.
All right.
Better.
I didn't have a question. I was actually going to suggest that we do questions before we take motions, but thank you.
Okay. And by the way, please use the raise hand feature, because I will not be able to see everyone. I see Lori's hand now. Go ahead, Lori.
Oh, sorry. It's not so much of a question. It's just more of a commentary, I think. Is that okay?
Sure.
Absolutely.
So I guess my concern is like around a renovation, for example, that, for someone who has lived in the first round back in 2006 through 2008, the renovation really impacted all of us in the building. I moved rooms 4 times. And I was thinking the last couple weeks, I was like, did I just imagine, is it just my weird memory? Because that was a long time ago. And was I the only one who felt that the renovation was really overwhelming for our community? And so I decided to ask around some of my other colleagues. There's not a lot of us left in the building, but I made the call to, ask around. And we also currently have some teachers that were students at that time. So I asked some of my now colleagues that are teachers that were in the building, and I asked them, I'm like, what were your memories of when we went through the first round? And they all said that basically the same thing that I did. It was very chaotic. It was very overwhelming, not just the moving of the classrooms, when there was the drilling, the hammering, the sawing during the school day. It was very disruptive. There was a lot of dust. There was a lot of plastic hanging up throughout the building to try to, alleviate and eliminate some of the dust, the sawdust, but it was still loud. It was very distracting. And I get, like, we had to live in the building. Most of us did. I was one of the few people that was actually in the trailers. We had the modular classrooms. In fact, Nate, Jasmine, her freshman year was in honors history with me. So
I know all too well about the
and so it's just, I just think about the renovation in the sense, like, I know economically some folks may have other ideas, thinking it might be cheaper, or which it really isn't for the most part. But I just think of what it's going to do to the school community and the impact. And that's sort of my concern around it. I mean, I'm looking here, obviously code reno only versus even just a renovation. It's still like the renovation only is still more money. I don't know. I'm just concerned about the students and obviously the teachers, and other community members that use the building. It's not just, those of us that are in there on a daily basis, that during the construction time period, it's good. I think it's going to be very disruptive. So I just wanted to state my piece. Thank you.
Well said. Jenna?
So just commend you guys. You're doing a great job. I love a lot of the slight tweaks that you did with the new construction option. I appreciated you going through the code, each of the options very carefully and fairly. I'm kind of focused on the code and the new option, because the code I feel like is what we have to do sort of regardless. And the new options, the sort of most efficient from a time and cost perspective way to get renovations and better space. But in that, can you clarify, just in your estimate, like you've seen in your expertise, does a code renovation, how long does that get us? Because I look at like the Salts and the Collins, and those buildings have been around forever, and they've renovated and things, but they last forever. This building doesn't feel as strong, but I don't know if the code renovation is going to be deep enough to really make this last beyond. I mean, I'm not talking 30 is probably like the bond time, but like 50 years, like, do we have to do more? What is the length, the life of this code renovation?
So you're asking about code only, right?
Yeah.
So there's no educational upgrades with that option. It's literally a systems upgrade. So the system,
right.
Yeah, I mean, the systems will have an extensive life, but you are disrupting that entire building to replace all of those systems with no educational. Pardon me?
Will the envelope be replaced?
It depends on what you touch, but I think he has money in for envelope, right, Patrick?
Yeah.
He does, because the energy code still.
So new windows.
Yeah.
Still the energy. Yeah.
So the building needs to be either insulated from the inside or overclad, because the envelope won't meet the backstop calcs.
So that's interesting. So I'm just trying to think of the life of the building. And then the other question I had is, I know it's a sensitive topic, but I just want to clarify whether or not and I understand that by the time if we get this, it may not be an issue, but right now tariffs are an issue in the construction market. They're up and down. Have tariffs been factored at all in this? Or do you plan to factor it in? Because when you give the estimate, you're gonna have to assume that these are tariffs. I don't know what we assume because they keep changing, but
Yeah.
it's just a reality. I know the construction industry is dealing with. I've seen lots of, and I just don't know how you're dealing with it right now or will have to deal with it.
Brooke, do you want to speak to that? Do you want us to speak to that?
What the estimators are not putting tariffs within the estimate itself, so it's usually below the line. And there's been anywhere from 3% to 6% we're hearing, but we didn't put anything below the line here, Margaret, yet.
No, not
Okay,
yet.
so we haven't identified, it would be just a number that would probably just be added to each one. And I think as we get to the next phase, we'll know a little bit more of what's going on in the world and what the impacts are. But they're not typically putting it within the construction cost. It's usually falling below the line in the soft cost and project cost.
Yeah, really
But yeah,
treating it as an additional contingency essentially, and not baking it into the trade costs. So.
right. I agree with that. And I will add that, I think the reality is that the whole political situation, as well as kind of where we are for a variety of reasons, is having a chilling effect on the construction market. So there's this two different things happening. There's a lot of uncertainty, prices going up, down, up, down. The labor market is definitely going down, right? Which, generally is good for school projects because they become more competitive because there are more people looking. And the other thing, which I think is very hard to factor in, but is also very much in our minds, is that the tariffs are likely to have a lot of impact on when you can get things, right? So you're going to have a lot less control over, well, we were going to get this, but now we can't because of tariffs. We have to get that. So it's a very complicated situation to assess. And there are factors sort of pointing in both directions in terms of cost, I would say, which is, all the more reason, I think, to sort of flag that it's an issue and say that we don't know enough right now, but it should be carried for this purpose in construction contingency.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarification.
Beth Ann?
Thanks. I just have a question about for the new construction, just sort of visually, I'm just trying to wrap my head around where the athletic fields are. So are the newer athletic fields, are they kind of roughly where the current building is?
Yeah, yes. Your current building,
Okay.
let me just see if you can see it dotted in. Can you see this dash line, Beth Ann? Well, can you see my pointer, everyone?
Yes, that I can see.
Okay, sorry, I must have been. So it's here.
Okay,
So this
got
is
it.
the existing building.
Okay,
It's dashed in.
perfect. And I'm just thinking about sort of communicating to folks. I'm voting for this option, so that's what I'm hoping we end up at. But the indoor athletic spaces, and I know this, you've gone over this, but I just want to clarify that the sort of new field house would include 2 basketball courts, an elevated track, new locker rooms, and a new weight room and a weight room. Everything's new, but is that right?
Well, the new field house is the same size as the existing at about 18,000 square feet. We will have 3 cross courts, which means there's one competition court, but 3 cross courts for practice or PE, and we'll design that. We do have an elevated walking track, and for those who went to Stoneham or Billerica, it's the walking track above. It also has a alternate PE, they call it, which is strength and conditioning room, and then there is a separate wrestling and
Here, yeah.
cheer room, and we actually had a great talk today from one of our sports practice leaders and talking about girls sports and how wrestling is becoming part of that. So there's a lot of changes, which we'll talk about as we go. And then the health classroom associated with that athletic program. Lockers are clearly in there, as well as some team rooms and training rooms. So those are the spaces that would be within the athletic program.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And one thing to note is that the existing gymnasium, the new program, we're replacing the existing gymnasium side, but we'll be looking to do it in a geometry that actually might get you more usable space, essentially, more striping options. So that's something we would dig into further.
Great. Thank you.
I know Rick had his hand up for a minute and then he put it back down. Did you have anything to add, Rick?
People keep answering my questions, so not really, no.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Before I move this? The mayor?
I don't have any questions. I was going to make a motion if there's no further questions.
I would say motion away.
Thanks. First, let me say, I want to say, express my gratitude to all the members of the building committee and the co-chairs, to the project team, and to everybody who's come to the meetings, the community forums about grade configuration, the forums to inform this process around the selection. It's really been, I think, a robust process, and one that I'm incredibly proud to have been part of. And I know throughout it that we've been singularly focused on creating an option for our community and for our kids that serves them well. Our district is thriving right now academically, and I think they deserve a building that supports them and is as excellent as they are. So being mindful of also our continuing obligation to the taxpayers, we've strived to make a grade configuration decision as a school committee that was reflective of cost considerations, among other things. We're making decisions around the energy use in this building with both a climate mindset, but also a cost sensitivity. And we're going to be, I think, continuing to explore additional ways to make this an affordable project for our community, even though it is going to be a transformative and substantial project by all measures. I just want to say I'm excited to make this motion and move to advance option A 4.4, the new construction option for the preferred schematic option of the New Salem High School.
I'm going to second the mayor's motion. Opportunity for questions, comments, concerns? Last chance. Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Yes, you're in favor of, was it 4.4? And then no, that you are not.
So Deb, do you want me to call the roll call, or do you
Yep,
want to
I
do
got it. I just had to
Okay.
pull it up. Okay, I'm ready. Everybody ready? Nate,
Yes.
Glenn. He was on, so maybe not anymore. Okay. Beth Ann,
Yes.
Anthony,
Yes.
Matt. He's still on?
Matt is still here.
Matt's still eating
Matt?
that delicious looking hamburger he had. Or cheeseburger.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to Matt. I'm gonna get his vote. Jenna,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes, sorry. Yes.
no problem, thank you. Worth waiting for. Lori,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
Perla.
I am all in. Big yes.
Betsy,
Full on yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
and I believe that's all the voting members. See if we can get Matt's. Is Matt there?
Yeah, sorry, struggling with the Zoom online. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We're
Yes,
voting
I'm a
Okay,
yes. I heard it all.
Okay.
I just
Oh,
couldn't
you
get
heard it
on.
all, good, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Matt.
Thank you.
And I just want to make sure, scrolling through to make sure I got everybody, yeah, I do not see Glenn on. Okay, so that is it. So
Alrighty,
there's
so
12 people here and 12 yeses.
alrighty, motion carries. Woohoo!
Yeah,
Woohoo!
nice job,
Great job.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Great job.
That was major. That is a huge, huge accomplishment, given how quickly we have moved through this. Thank you all. Okay. Well, since you're all still with us, Megan, are you going to be able to stay a little longer? I know you had council, right?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna drop soon if that's okay.
That's
Are you
okay.
gonna? Okay.
I think
Thank you.
it looks like we're good. Okay. Thank you for being here for this one. So, okay, so we're going to turn the table back to Deborah to pick up where we left off last time on the choice of construction delivery.
Okay, so we had reviewed a bunch of slides at the last meeting and information about both options available for this project, design bid build, chapter 149, or construction manager at risk, chapter 149A. So I only have one slide tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions people might have remaining from the last meeting. And I'm going to quickly go through some pros and cons of each, kind of summary of each. Design bid build is generally simpler procurement process, lowest price proposal proposed and accepted. If it meets all the requirements, and it's a simple accounting process. It's closed book, so we don't have to look at everything. Generally has a lower base contract cost. It's considered more cost effective because this initial contract cost is typically less. It is, however, a linear process and can sometimes mean a longer schedule. If bids are over estimate, it may require rebidding the entire project, which costs time. GC project management, safety, and field supervision is minimal. There's not as much money in the project on their side, and therefore not as much of those components. There is an increased probability of disputes and claims, and there's no builder input in the design and planning process for constructability or budgeting. In terms of construction manager at risk, some pros are it's a qualification-based selection, so you have more say in who you bring on board. The builder assists with the budgeting, the logistics, and constructability. The builder owns the schematic design costs because the idea, and that's why we're asking for your vote tonight, is to bring them on board to be part of schematic design. So since schematic design is the basis of the funding agreement and the scope and the funding agreement with the MSBA, that's important. It's easier to coordinate early bid packages if we have enabling work, utility work, or other things that would be good to get started on early to help with the project. There's a team environment which reduces the likelihood of claims, and the CM is assuming risk for project cost and schedule. On the downside, there is a two-step procurement process, which does take time. There is a cost associated with pre-construction services. We have allowed for this value in the schematic design budget, which you currently have, but there will be pre-construction costs associated with the design development, construction document phase prior to construction. And some additional costs. It's generally considered that this could be a more expensive option, but it's hard to accurately estimate. And what it boils down to is that typically all new projects on a clean site are simpler projects can benefit from the design bid build process. This is a general statement, and generally complex projects with some risk associated with them benefit from a construction manager at risk process. So before I ask if there are any questions, I wanted to comment that yesterday the finance working group met to review the design bid build versus construction manager at risk options. Anthony had mentioned this at the last meeting that this would be a good thing to do. So Anthony, do you want to comment on that meeting and the results of the meeting?
Just that the finance working group unanimously favors the construction manager at risk method. For the, I think we've been over the reasons. So unless people have specific questions for why we decided that, we're all behind CM at risk.
Great. So are there any questions or comments?
Jenna.
I just comment on the cost. I think it is really hard, particularly of the size and complexity of this project. But noting on the if you have to rebid, that could require redesign. It requires more time and effort design and the OPM, and then every time you waste time, your construction costs go up. So I do want to note that that could be a high risk. And disputes claims, if you do get involved in those, they could be a real, that's also very costly because it many times requires legal and other things that are consultants that are very high cost. So those are kind of a risk there on that side.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing or seeing that, I think it would be fitting if Anthony, as the finance working group, would make the motion.
Certainly. Motion to deliver the proposed project via construction manager at risk based on the information presented to the building committee.
Need a second? Thank you. I'll second.
Second. Yeah.
Questions, comments? This is the vote. A yes vote is for construction manager at risk or chapter 149A. Roll call, Deborah?
Yes. Okay, let me just make sure I'm not confusing my roll call. So give me just 1 second. My computer is not happy. Okay, I'm ready. Nate?
Yes.
Glenn, I don't believe is here.
Yeah.
Oh, you are here.
Yes.
Glenn,
Here.
great.
Yes.
Thank you. Beth Ann?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Jenna?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Thank you. Lori?
Yes.
Mayor Pangalo?
Yes.
Perla?
Yes.
Betsy?
Yes.
Megan? Oh, she left.
Megan.
Keith?
Yes.
And I think that's it. There were 11 votes for that. So, thank you.
All right, thanks. The motion carries. Margaret, were you going to say something?
Deborah, we got 12 because we added Glenn and we
okay.
lost Megan.
Oh, right.
So
You're right.
it
12.
was the
Thank
same.
you.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
okay, thanks, Deborah. So if we're going to go that way with the construction manager, I see we vote for nominations for a CM selection committee. Is there a particular number of folks you want on that committee, Margaret?
Well, I will tell you, Deb and I talked about this earlier today. I think what we'd like to do, and I think it's hard to do on Zoom, but I'm open to it, is to for folks to either nominate or self-nominate themselves for the committee. So maybe what we could do is if you are interested in being on the committee to nominate yourself, we'd want to check with the folks who aren't here and then perhaps vote on that subcommittee. So the reason for this committee is that this process of selecting a CM has a statutory requirement for a construction manager at risk selection committee. So it's a little bit, it's more structured because the statute tells us that we need to have one. The statute also tells us that we need representatives of the city and the district, the architect, and the OPM. But we can have more. So in this case, I'm gonna nominate Anthony. I think Anthony would need to be, as the procurement person, would need to be a member of the subcommittee. It would most likely on the OPM side be Deborah. The architectural team would need to provide a participant, and then the committee can decide how many members this committee can decide who's interested and wants to participate. I will say it defines itself a little bit in that we will be doing a lot of this work over the summer. It won't require a ton of meetings, but we will be asking you, that committee, to review the RFQ to help us score the RFQ and determine a shortlist. We'll be reporting back to the building committee. We have 2 summer meetings, and then that committee will also be participating in reviewing the proposal and participating in interviews. So if you are going to be away a lot this summer, it's probably not your thing. And we will, I mean, it's everybody's, it's just, everybody has the same issue, right? So I'm kind of open, and I guess I'm going to look to the co-chairs, Rick and Nate, to say, do you want to go ahead and try to vote on the committee tonight, or?
I would recommend, and Rick, you can chime in. I would recommend that we do it tonight, and so we could do it. If you want to you can and I'd like to do it when we make the vote, it's the whole slate, not individual. So if you want to self-nominate, you can. If you want to nominate someone else, we'll give that person the opportunity to accept or reject. And then once we have those who are interested, just vote on the slate.
Okay.
Would that work, Rick?
That works for me. I do know, and I don't know if Matt is still on as an example, but a couple people had reached out to me and said, I am interested in this. I know Paul is, and he's not here tonight. So I can nominate them.
Matt is on, and I can tell you he put his thumbs up when you said that. So we'll take that as a nomination, Matt. And
so why don't we do? Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, so why don't we do? Those who are interested in nominating themselves, please raise your hand.
I've got Anthony, Lisa,
Matt,
and I think that's it.
Okay.
And Paul, I guess, because he reached out to Rick about this.
I think Paul would have to be here. Unless you submitted something in writing, which I don't think he did.
I mean, we could just nominate him, right?
Oh, that's true. Okay. All right.
I'm gonna nominate Paul. So
perfect. Okay.
Thanks, Margaret. Save me the kick under the table.
Is there anyone who wants to nominate someone else other than themselves? Okay. So Deborah, can you give me those names again? I'm sorry.
Yes. Lisa, Matt, Paul, and Anthony.
Thank you. So I'm going to make them.
That's a good group.
And I'll do it for Perkins and Will.
And then it would be myself for the OPM and Brooke for Perkins and Will.
So I make a motion that we approve the slate of nominees for the the CM selection committee.
Yeah.
Need a second.
Second.
Questions, comments? We need a roll call.
Yes. Can you tell me who that second was?
Keith.
That was Keith. Thank you, Keith. Okay, back to my roll call spreadsheet. Okay, Nate.
Yes.
Glenn? Not here. Okay. Beth Ann?
Yes.
Sorry, Glenn, yes.
Thank you, Glenn. Anthony?
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Jenna.
Yes.
Jenna escaped the list. Oh, how do we do that? Rick,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Mayor Pangalo,
Yes.
Perla,
Yes.
Betsy,
Yes.
Megan, not here, Keith.
Yes.
That's everyone.
All righty. The
Thank you,
motion-
12. Yep,
Unanimous. Thank
motion
you.
carries. Thank you.
thank you.
So I just one one thing I guess I skipped over was on the agenda, we had an update on school tours. Superintendent Zrak was going to speak to that. So we're gonna go with an update from the finance working group. And then we're gonna go with the update from the superintendent on school tours. And then we'll go other issues not anticipated.
The finance working group met yesterday. The only point of discussion was the CN at risk versus design bid build. So we did not approve any invoices. And that is it.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions for Anthony? All right. So again, going out of order, we're going to have the superintendent give an update on the school tours.
Yeah, we, over April break, we had a series of tours, that were very productive. There were a number of building committee members, school committee members who attended. We went to Somerville, Billerica, and to, where else did we go? What was it?
Belmont.
Belmont, thank you. Sorry, I can't believe I forgot Belmont. It was incredibly helpful to speak to both users of the building, some of the designers. I strongly encourage other members of the committee to participate in as many tours as they can. I'm very interested in going to see Waltham High School because it is a new high school that has CTE programs. I know it's not a Perkins and Will building, and I know we all love Perkins and Will buildings, but for the purposes of CT, I think it's important to see buildings. It's rough. It's a little bigger than what ours would be in number of students, but it's worth taking a look at. And I strongly encourage people, if you haven't gone to see Billerica, it is a school that I think is well designed. It's very thoughtful. It's not that much bigger in terms of enrollment than ours. And so strongly encourage people to engage in that. I'd also just want to share that we did have a very good session with Brooke and Margaret with the executive team and the academic team, and Brooke mentioned it earlier. The adjacency exercise was a good one, and I'm excited for Salem High School to their leadership team and their instructional team. I also think it's important for teachers at Salem High School and staff to have a chance to look. So Lori, I think we'll have to engage with you about finding ways to get this in front of teachers around the different adjacencies. I think that was a very helpful exercise, and especially will be for people who will be users of the building on a regular basis. Laura, you're going to be here for another 30, 40 years, so we need to make sure that
Oh,
that
Lordy.
it's that we need to make sure it's up to your standards for sure. So with that, that's my update.
Thanks, Steve. Any questions for Steve? All right. Other items not previously anticipated. I don't have anything. Rick, you have anything?
I'm all set. I can't believe you did it, Nate. 4 votes or 3 votes, and we're 20 minutes early.
Record time. Now is an opportunity for public comment. I don't know if there's anyone on here is there anyone?
There are some other
people.
attendees.
Well, there's
Yes.
31 people on the call.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 6, Salem Access TV, somebody from QED, and a few other people. A couple
So
other.
do they have access to making a comment?
Yeah, they can be unmuted
Okay.
and
Okay.
And promoted, yeah.
so if they have
Okay.
someone has a comment, they just raise their hand.
So yep, this is your opportunity to comment. Comments from the public? All right. Seeing no hands raised. Before I adjourn, just to remind you of the upcoming meetings. It was on the agenda. We still have a series of meetings, the next one being May 29th. And that would be a review development of preferred option. Other than that, any last minute comments? This was a really good meeting, really positive, good votes, and I think we are really moving in the right direction. So I echo what the mayor said. Shout out to Perkins and Will, shout out to Margaret, shout out to Deborah, and shout out to the rest of the committee for all the great work. Pearl, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. The next meeting, I believe, is at the Collins Middle School. Do we have a place where it's going to be held in the school?
Yeah, we want to do it in the chambers. Yeah, chambers.
The chambers, okay.
We're trying to save you all from, sweating it out for 2 hours. So Collins is a cooler space, so we're gonna move to Collins for the summer.
After tonight's meeting, I'll be sending out the invites for all the 4 meetings going forward.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just forgot Patrick Cunningham. Patrick, I'm so sorry. Thank you for your hard work as well. Anyone else from Perkins and Will or Extension that I'm missing here?
I think Lisa's up. Lizzie's up. We'll relay the thanks.
Yeah, please send her my kudos. All right, folks. Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All righty. Thanks, everyone.
Well done. Thank you.
Great evening. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.